ladies, this is Mocha Mommy here bringing you another video. I'm out for a walk, so you may hear some noise in the background. But this video I've been working on for a long time, just trying to figure out what kind of information I want to put in. And basically this is how to level up through the military. I served in the military as an officer in the United States Army under the AMED command, which meant that I was medical. So I'm just going to give you guys some advice from my experience and what it is that you can consider. I've also been reading a lot of your comments and your feedback, so I want to make sure that I answer your questions as well. Okay, the number one thing that I'm seeing that's kind of going around YouTube, and not just YouTube, but I find this in general. This whole thing with Black people and Air Force, 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 as if that's the only branch of the service, or somehow it's a better branch of the service. This is what I'm going to say. Of course, there's inter-service rivalries, friendly rivalries, and I am a little biased, but I can say that Air Force might not be the best choice. Here's why. The Air Force is a lot smaller than the Army and the Navy, and therefore there are less positions, open positions available. So if you might want to do something very specific, or you have a very specific career trajectory, sometimes those positions might not be open, enlisted or officer. Okay, so things like dental hygiene, things like, that's the main one I can really think of, simply because I'm medical and that's where most of my advice is going to come from. You might find that those positions might not be available. Also, Air Force leadership kind of has a reputation of being like a little jealous and petty, simply because as you move up the ranks, because it's a smaller branch of service, there might not be a position available for you. So you'll see like a lot of people get stuck at like that E7, E6, E7, or that 04, 05 rank and not really be able to ascend. So that's really a shame that you can be in the service for 10, 12, 13 years and then not be able to get to your full 20 because they just don't have a need for you in your rank in a position. Okay, so that's why I think that before you make any decisions, make sure you talk to all of the branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, which falls under the Department of Transportation, but yet you still get a lot of the same military benefits. Make sure you speak to all of the branches about your specific goals, your specific needs, and your specific career trajectory. Okay, sometimes it just might not be about serving in the National Guard and getting money for school. There really is a lot of opportunity that you can take advantage of. Number one, when it comes to enlistment, do the best you can on your physical fitness test and also on the entrance exam. It was called the ASVAB back in the day, right? It's where you want to make sure that your scores are the highest they can potentially be so that it can keep you into considerations for certain schools. Now, when it comes to military medical, there are two branches that you can go through. It's like the 68 Whiskey Combat Medic route, or any of the other 68 designators, 68 Delta, 68 Mike, like your surgical technicians or your medical equipment repair. Okay, so what I would say is that even if you want to be a nurse, even if you want to be a physician, I would stay away from the 68 Whiskey designator. Why? Because 68 Whiskeys can be easily deployed to line units, meaning combat or combat support services, and not get a lot of clinical hospital time. And you still are in these combat units, but you have a more challenging and difficult promotion path when you're enlisted. So therefore, I would go towards the other medical specialties. Even if you want to be a nurse, even if you have that like 68 Whiskey Mike 6 identifier, which means that you are a LVN especially in the state of Texas, right? Because that's where the school is, that you're an LVN, even still, that 68 Whiskey identifier can still put you with a line unit. So you're better off being a surgical tech, being a pharmacy tech, being a medical equipment repair than you might be going into the 68 Whiskey designator. Another thing you might want to realize too when you're enlisted, really, if you are single, if you are childless, Consider going active duty and choosing an overseas assignment. Your food is covered. Your housing is covered. You don't need transportation, and it's the perfect way to lay your financial foundation. When you do, set boundaries on how much money you're going to send home if you have family members that you do feel obligated to take care of. Sometimes I would just say, pick a number. Maybe it's $300 a month. Send your family $270 and then save $30. Okay, away in your bank account. And then when emergency, send the 270 very consistently. And then when an emergency comes up, that 10% that you had been saving, send them all of that at one time. And then continue to do that, because you're going to find that a lot of people are going to think that you're really wealthy, that they have access to your money. And sometimes there's guilt, right? There's survivor's guilt that you made it out of a difficult situation while your family's financially struggling. So please, guys, keep that in mind. Set those healthy boundaries. Overseas is such a great opportunity simply because, number one, you make a little bit more money. And two, it's just an opportunity to kind of travel, to see the world. But the first thing I would do when I get to any duty station, either stateside or overseas, is sign up for MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. Okay? So whatever the equivalent is in the other branches, I would still make sure to sign up for that. They have everything from intramural sports to delegations that go to a lot of professional sporting events. They have travel, discount tickets to theme parks, so many great opportunities. And you're going to find, especially as a woman, especially those of you who are very young women, that sometimes you're going to encounter leadership that is going to be a little harder on you, and they're going to kind of come across as the overprotective dad. Okay, well, you might seem that you're always getting in trouble, you're always getting punished, you can't get passes to get off the installation, they're just being harder on you when it comes to work. And it's because, listen, they're in the military, so already they have a very strong protective instinct. And they're going to kind of come across as that overly strict dad, but you still are going to want to have a social life. So if you do it through MWR, it does give them some sort of assurance to know that maybe you're on the bowling team, or that you're on the kickball team, or that perhaps that you are going on the trip to Italy, that you're leaving from, your Germany and going on the trip to Paris, so it just really gives them a little bit more peace of mind, because sometimes they do act like overly strict dads towards their female young enlisted soldiers. So just keep that in mind, okay, before you kind of start to buck the system and feel picked on, because I know that that's a really common occurrence, especially when you have somebody who's 18, 19, never been away from home before. That's such a common source of conflict between Black women, and sometimes that leadership, that really overprotective dad mentality that some of these guys have. And sometimes they're not very healthy either with communicating that. But it just gives you guys both a common ground where you can still socialize in healthy ways, and that they can feel some kind of assurance that you're going to be kind of looked out for and taken care of, and not just out at the club underage drinking. Okay? Also, MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, in order to participate, you can't have any pending disciplinary action against you, especially to go on the trips. So it also makes sure that it kind of vets out some of the bad eggs, some of those guys who have the Article 15s or pending UCMJ action. So it's a way that you're always kind of interacting with good people. Another thing that you guys can really look into is volunteering with things like FRGs, family readiness groups, things like the USO and their fundraisers, Wounded Warrior Project, things like that. And you make sure you're going to meet a lot of great military personnel, active, retired, reserves, a lot of great military spouses. And these are the people you can talk to about your career trajectory. Sometimes, unfortunately, some people aren't rooting for your career trajectory. even some people who are in your direct chain of command. So it might be good to have another source if you guys want to really talk about other ways and other paths for your career, from specialty schooling, advanced degrees, maybe even moving from enlisted to officer or enlisted to warrant. Having that advocacy of people who are military affiliated but are not in your chain of command could really help you. Not to mention, there's a lot of great fun events, community service projects, and a great way to network and meet good people just for friendship. And also create alliances that can really help you not just build your career, but just build your social life and build your social skills. I know a lot of times I would do some of the military affiliated charities that helped to create adaptable homes for wounded soldiers. And I made a lot of really great friends through that. And I will always be grateful for those opportunities. I'll also be grateful for those opportunities that when we did have some of those like potlucks and USO fundraisers, I'll always be so grateful for all the people that I met and the experiences that I had. So it was really ends up being really good. The concerts I attended, so I'll always be grateful for that. I think one of the things that stands out in my mind the most is probably when the Kansas City Chiefs cheerleaders came to our installation, and they kind of sat at a table filled with us. It was a bunch of girls at the table. And they were like, "Hey, you guys coming to the show?" And we're kind of like, "No, that's really for the guys." And they're like, "No, it's for everybody." And it was really great because it had been, at that point, it had been months since we had really done anything like worn makeup or high heel shoes or things like that. And so we were just kind of asking them about like fashion trends. We were asking them about makeup. A couple of them let us try on their high heel shoes and like walk around for a little bit. And we ended up having like a really good time. And then we ended up going to the USO show, and we ended up they ended up bringing a couple of us on stage to dance, and we just had a blast. So I'll never forget that. I'll always be grateful for that experience. And those are the types of things that I'm trying to say. And you can probably hear the smile in my voice because it's such a great memory. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity overseas. So you guys don't forget to just put yourself out there and still have fun, because there's so many great fun experiences you can have, not just going to the bars and the clubs around the installation and drinking, because it seems like that's what a lot of people tend to do. Now, as far as the education side, the Navy spends more money educating their sailors than any other branch of the service. They spend more money on education than any other branch, okay? It's not uncommon for them to go out to sea for 7 months and a bunch of sailors come back with associate's degrees. That's not uncommon. So if education's a priority, seriously consider the Navy. I know my sister-in-law's in the Navy, and she has a pretty good work-life balance, honestly, because of what she does. And because there's so much personnel and so many open positions within active and reserve units, she's been able to go from just being a mechanic to now a paralegal. And they are actually paying for a lot of her certifications, so that when she walks away to retire, she'll be able to walk right into a real world position. So that's fantastic for her. The Army can do things that are similar, but because sometimes of our deployment and field schedule, it could be a little bit more challenging, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. My suggestion to you, if you're Army, whether enlisted or officer, take advantage of those education programs and really kind of focus on things like certifications, professional development classes, and maybe not necessarily a degree. You're going to find a lot of times if you complete an active duty enlistment contract, when you go back into the civilian world, sometimes they'll waive the degree, but they still want the skill. So make it a point to get as many professional certifications as you can for anything in IT, medical, any field that you're interested in, business, anything that you're interested in, get those certifications, because it just might serve you a little bit better if you decide to honorably discharge at the end of that contract, or if you guys decide to go on to become a reservist or National Guard, which is something I highly suggest. I highly suggest after completing your initial active duty enlistment that you go on to National Guard or go on to reserves. This is going to be a great way to get a work-life balance. It's going to be a great way for continuity in your career. It's going to be a great way to get very lucrative bonuses for retention. It's going to be a great way for you to still get your education paid for if you have larger educational goals, and it gives you a better work-life balance. Also, if you ever are laid off and lose your job, you can always raise your hand and get activated. I never had that problem. There was always a VA hospital, an SRP site, a TMC, a true medical clinic. I'm going to try my best to explain my acronyms, but there was always something that I can do when I was a stay-at-home mom and I needed a little bit of extra money. I could always kind of raise my hand and find an assignment that could help me make a little bit of extra cash if I ever needed anything, or I just wanted to go on a trip or needed a car repair. So it was really a good opportunity, and I highly suggest that those of you who are done with your active duty obligation or thinking about doing it, and then you can make it a career that way. It makes it a lot easier to make it a career when you do a certain amount of active duty and then a certain amount of reserve National Guard time, okay? So keep that in mind. If I'm single and I'm childless, I wouldn't do I wouldn't do reserves first. I wouldn't do National Guard first. I would go active duty first, because I just think that training and professional development, it's best to have it on a full-time basis at a younger age when you have less obligations. And also, if you're just in a cycle where you need to break out of a funk, or things maybe are not great at home or in school, taking that break to go active duty for just a few years is a really great opportunity. And also, there's more options for choosing your respective MOS. Now, the officer route. Again, look at all of the branches of the service, because again, like I'm telling you, the smaller branches, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, tend to not have as many options. OCS is something you can do. Do not be afraid of it. Do not think that you're not qualified. Do not think that you should be intimidated by it at all. At all. It is something you are perfectly capable of mastering, completing, doing, and being. Everybody is young. Everybody is inexperienced. Everybody has a learning curve. The average OCS candidate is between the ages of 23 and 28. Everybody's a kid. Everybody's young, and everybody's going to make mistakes and have a learning curve. Do not be intimidated by it. Do not think this is something that you cannot accomplish. Please.
There is also the officer side to consider. There are 3 main ways to kind of become an officer in the United States military. 1, through ROTC. 2, through military academies. And 3, through direct commissioning. There is also a process called Green to Gold, which I'll go into. 1, through ROTC. This is how most of your commissioned officers, your leadership of the Army, gets into the officer ranks. Reserve Officers Training Corps is how I got my commission. What it is a collegiate program where your minor automatically will be military science. You take military-related courses, you learn military etiquette, uniform wear, leadership principles, all while taking your major. This is a really great opportunity for people who've maybe done junior ROTC in high school. And even if you haven't, it's such a fantastic opportunity for those of you guys who are still in high school, who are student athletes. You guys definitely have an advantage into applying for an ROTC scholarship. It covers full tuition, room and board, fees, a monthly stipend, and biannual book allowances for books. So it does cover your college tuition completely, and you will graduate debt-free. But there is an obligation. You either have to do 4 years active duty, which is what I recommend, or 8 years reserve. For those of you who have a larger career goal, like being a physician, a veterinarian, or anything that requires a graduate degree, you may or may not have that opportunity to go to grad school right after you graduate. Sometimes the needs of the military has you go right into taking your commission and your assignment, and then you'll have to wait till your obligation is over before you're able to enroll in into medical school. Believe it or not, I don't think this is a bad thing. There really is not much difference into going to medical school at 22 than there is at 26. There's really not that big of a difference. I also did this to make absolute sure was that the military was what I wanted to do. So I did, in fact, pay back my obligation before I decided to kind of go forward with my graduate degree and having the military pay for that graduate degree and any advanced certifications, just to make sure that I wasn't in for a whole decade, 20 years plus, before I made that decision that I wanted the military to finance my graduate school. So I really think that also medical schools are very impressed. Graduate schools are very impressed by military service, and it really will help your application to stand out in some of the more competitive programs out there. So don't hesitate to fill out an ROTC application. Really, the best way to figure out which ROTC has some of the better programs, which ROTCs are going to be right for you, is to have discussions with commissioned officers. For those of you who are enlisted, you have an opportunity to do something called Green to Gold in the United States Army. And I'm sure the other branches of the United States military have the same, where if you've met part of your enlistment obligation, you can possibly speak with recruitment and retention and talk to them about using part of your enlisted service to go to college, get an ROTC scholarship, become part of a reserve officers training corps on the campus of your choosing that you get accepted to, and then become a commissioned officer that way. Believe it or not, officers who were formerly enlisted are at the top of the pay scale. So this is a really great way for those of you who might be young enlisted, and who might have thought of just doing your minimal service obligation and taking your GI Bill. If you find that you are really resonating with your career, then you may want to consider Green to Gold. I wouldn't speak to your direct chain of command about it initially. That's where those alliances with some of your military affiliated charities, service organizations, and social organizations really can come into play, because that's where you kind of can figure out if this is best for you. Discussions with cadre on the campuses of your choosing. For those of you who are freshmen, it's still not too late to apply for a ROTC scholarship. I think you can apply up to your sophomore year. Freshman and sophomore can still apply for an ROTC scholarship. So really consider it. The other options are your military academies. It's West Point for the United States Army, Annapolis, U.S. Naval Academy. They also have the Marines on their base, at their school, the Annapolis. Also, the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, that's in New London, Connecticut, and the Air Force Academy in Colorado. So those are very exclusive. They're challenging to get into, but if you are a very competitive scholar student athlete, definitely apply. Here's the reality. These military academies and the private military academies, by private military academies, I mean schools like Virginia Military Institute, the Citadel, the Merchant Marine Academy, and Norwich in Vermont. And also your military academies, this is where your future elected officials are. This is where a lot of your government contractors, executive class of your government contractors are. This is going to be where your Pentagon leadership is going to come from. This is definitely a very exclusive club. And once you're in for life, and you will reap benefits for this for life. And more Black women are attending these military academies, and more Black women are getting access because more and more Black women are becoming interested in the service. I've shown you guys charts and graphs before, and I'll make sure that I include it about just how much the diversity of enlistment and commissioning of the United States Army, as well as the other armed services, has progressed. In fact, Black women, we're one of the few ethnic groups that out enlist and out enroll our male counterparts. So really, this is a great opportunity for you guys to learn a lot about the military, and this is an opportunity for you to see if it's right for you. Like, listen, a debt-free degree is a blessing. A debt-free degree and a guaranteed job when you get out is a huge blessing in today's economy. Really consider ROTC. For those of you who are competitive student athletes, consider doing some of the public or private military academies. Even though their standards are very stringent and very tough, it has a lifetime of benefits. I will never, ever, ever regret a single day that I spent in ROTC and that I spent in the uniform service. Have there been challenges? Absolutely. But there have been no regrets. The only regrets are the opportunities that I didn't take advantage of. Guys, this is nothing I don't look back on my military career and think that I shouldn't have done it. I don't ever think that has never crossed my mind, even on my worst days. Even with deployments overseas, in theaters of operation, even with having a combat action badge, even with sustaining injuries, I never regretted my service. I have never regretted my service. It has helped me to travel to places I never would have been, meet people I never would have met. And it has been by far one of the most rewarding career experiences of my life, even at some of the lowest and most difficult points of it. So I strongly encourage you guys, if you're considering it, do it. Do it. I have no regrets. And if you talk to others, they don't have regrets either. Their only regrets is not taking advantage of all the opportunities that it has to offer. Now there's direct commissioning. That's how my husband ended up in the military. Was he already had a college degree and then went to a recruiter and spoke to him about a direct commissioning. He had a lot of members of his family who were in the military. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he had a family member who was doing like a part-time hometown recruiter assignment. And that's kind of how he ended up going that way. So definitely, if you guys have a military-related charity or social organization in your area, like Wounded Warriors, USO, or any kind of meetups that cater to veterans, definitely network and reach out to them and ask those questions, because let me tell you, so many people are proud of their service and they are happy to answer questions for you and talk to you about it and share their experience and mentor you, because it is such an exclusive club and it's just such an amazing camaraderie to be brothers and sisters in arms. And we recognize each other wherever we go. And when you see the hats or the stickers or the emblems or the pins, it's a way to stop someone and an instant way to start conversation. If you're to start a business, it's a built-in market because other veterans are going to want to support you. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, and I will never regret a single day that I spent in the uniform. There is no one person on YouTube who can tell you if the military is good or bad, what branch is right for you. It's such a personalized and individualized decision that it's going to take a lot of care and a lot of due diligence to figure out if it is the right case. But if you do have strong test scores on your ASVAB, if you are already enlisted and you want to make a career out of it, if you are just thinking about a direct commission because it's something you've always wanted to do, my suggestion is to really look into it and to actually do it. Again, I have no regrets and I wish you the absolute best. It's a very short time for a lifetime worth of benefits. I'll be following up with this issue and hopefully I can get more of you guys who are veterans. Maybe we can do a panel. I'll leave my contact information in the description box and we can just talk about things that we learned, how we grew, benefits that the military offered us and how we took advantage of them, or maybe even some of the things that we regret and things we wish we should have done. So we can all just make better informed decisions and kind of share and learn from each other. This is Mocha Mommy, and I'll see you in the next video.